in attendance. This is usually followed by questions and answers to questions, statements by ministers, items under public business, and private members' motions. But before we begin, let's try a parliamentary trivia question. True or false? It was the Right Excellent Marcus Garvey who said, quote, "We want the spirit of national comradeship. Let us unite to accomplish this, and Jamaica shall indeed become a better place for all of us." End quote. Get the answer at the end of this introduction to the lower house. On the agenda, under public business, an act to amend the law reform, Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017 is to be taken. Remember, the purpose of the measure is to continue a slate of special powers granted to law enforcement officials to fight very high levels of violent crime in the affected areas. An act to amend the Financial Services Commission Act is to be tabled. You should know that the Financial Services Commission, which is governed by this act, supervises and regulates the securities industry, the insurance industry, and the private pensions industry. As such, it may be properly described as an integrated financial services regulator. The third Supplementary Estimates 2023-2024 is also to be tabled and referred to the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee. It should be noted that the agenda can be adjusted, with items being added, removed, or replaced. If you are planning to attend a session, here are some rules to keep in mind. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card from the office of the clerk. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. It's almost time to go to the main event, but before that, let's get the answer to the trivia question we asked, true or false. It was the Right Excellent Marcus Garvey who said, quote, "We want the spirit of national comradeship. Let us unite to accomplish this, and Jamaica shall indeed become a better place for all of us." End quote. It's true. From as early as 1932, the Right Excellent Marcus Garvey made the first definitive call for self-governance and shared his vision for what he called the New Jamaican. In the debut editorial of his publication of the same name, Garvey explained his dream for Jamaica. He said, quote, "We want the spirit of national comradeship. Let us unite to accomplish this, and Jamaica shall indeed become a better place for all of us." Before we get to the main event, let's revise the rules of Parliament, or as it is formally called, the standing orders, as it relates to when and how members are allowed to speak during a session. At present, the Joint Select Committee of Parliament is considering job descriptions, codes of conduct, and performance standards for parliamentarians, and it is hosting town hall meetings to hear the public's opinion and inform them about the role of MPs as well. It was there that Member of Parliament for St. Andrew East Rural, Juliet Holness, addressed the rules regarding when one can address the House.
The new MAG system operates in keeping with this. Exactly the standing orders. However, when persons over time start to drift in their behavior and pattern from what is supposed to happen, if you're not careful, they start to think, like many of our constituents, that that is exactly what is supposed to be. So the standing order specifically says that you are not to speak unless the speaker acknowledges you and tells you you can speak. No MAG system changes that. That is the rule. Now, our practice in Parliament, because the MAG system used to malfunction, is 3 people would be talking at the same time. That's what happened. You would have somebody who is speaking, that person is doing their presentation. And the rule is that they should speak in silence. Everybody should be quiet and listening. Uninterrupted, says the standing order.
Stay with us and see if you notice if the members are adhering to the rules.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding. We, thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thine heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsel may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. This honorable House now resumes its sitting. It is indeed a great honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to this sitting of the Honorable House of Representatives on Tuesday, September 26, 2023. I would like to extend special welcome to those who are joining us online via the various social media platforms, PBCJ live stream, and those who are in the gallery. Call of the roll.
Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Ms. Grange, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Dr. Tufton, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Vaz, Mrs. Mallow Fort, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Warmington, Mr. Main, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Terry Long, Dr. Dunn, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Witter, Ms. Smith, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Mr. Charles, members of this Honorable House, I received the following letter from Mrs. Dalrymple Philibert. Dear Ms. Curtis, this is to formally advise the House of Representatives that I have resigned as Speaker and member of the House of Representatives with effect from the date of this letter. And the date of the letter is September 21, 2023. We will now proceed to elect a Speaker of this Honorable House. Members present, I call upon you to elect from among you one not being a minister or parliamentary secretary to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Madam Clerk, may I say before I nominate, this House would like to extend its thanks and appreciation to the outgoing Speaker, the Member of Parliament for South Trelawney, and we wish her well, but do express our appreciation for the sterling work she contributed as Speaker of the House. Madam Clerk, I beg to nominate the Member of Parliament for the great constituency of East Rural St. Andrew, Mrs. Juliet Holness, to become the Speaker of the House. Ms. Clark, Ms. Curtis.
Madam Clerk, I beg to second the motion.
Mrs. Juliet Holness has been nominated and seconded. No. 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 The Honorable Juliet Anne-Marie Holness has been nominated and seconded. Are there any further nominations? No. Are there any further nominations? No. Are there any further nominations? No. There being no other nominations, I have the honor of declaring the Honorable Juliet Anne-Marie Holness Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Madam Speaker, welcome to the chair. I take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to congratulate you, firstly, to make yourself available to be the Speaker of this Honourable House, and to thank the members who have all supported you in you becoming Speaker of the House. I can say, Madam Speaker, someone that I have known for over 2 decades, I have absolutely no doubt that your competence, your skill, your intelligence will ensure that this Parliament is conducted in an orderly and in a way that the Jamaican people can be proud. I have no doubt that your management of this Parliament, as demonstrated when you were Deputy Speaker and also as Chairman of committees, will ensure that meetings are conducted without fear or favor, without bias, and also to give the opportunity for all the members to participate and to make their voices heard. Madam Speaker, I wish you well, and I have no doubt that your stint as Speaker will be a sterling one.
Madam Speaker, I join with my colleague in congratulating you on the ascension to the chair of Speaker of this great House. In congratulating you, Madam Speaker, I wish, as I did before the start of the meeting, to say that early in your tenure, it is my hope that both leader of government business and myself will be able to sit with you to look at some of the issues that we have had to deal with in the past and to see how we can share in our collective wisdom in the guidance that you will need from time to time from those of us in this chamber. We wish you well. We genuinely want you to do well so that your tenure can be very successful. Madam Speaker, I would not resume my seat without thanking colleagues, all the colleagues in this House who have reached out to me. In fact, not only the colleagues in the House, but staff members, indeed all of Jamaica, who have reached out to me over the last 2 weeks as I go through my own personal trial, and to really say, despite the fact that we are nowhere closer today than we were 2 weeks ago at finding my daughter, and her mother, but I do feel the prayers, and it's prayers from hundreds and hundreds of Jamaicans who have reached out. And, in these times, sometimes your own faith can be weakened, but I can assure you, Madam Speaker, and indeed this nation, my faith is stronger today than it has been. I want to thank the police for their work that they're doing and to urge everybody to continue to pray so that they will be returned safely. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Juliette Anne-Marie Holness being elected Speaker of the House of Representatives. It creates a vacancy, and now I will invite Madam Speaker to help to choose a deputy.
I now call upon the members to elect one from among you, not being a minister or parliamentary secretary, to be the Deputy Speaker.
Speaker, I now nominate the Member of Parliament for the great constituency of St. James Central, Heroy Clark, to be the Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
Mr. Heroy Clark has been nominated and seconded. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? There be no other nominations. I have the honor of declaring Mr. Heroy Clark Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Honorable members, let me take this opportunity to thank you for the confidence that has been reposed in me to handle the very difficult job of being the Speaker of this Parliament. I accept my responsibility with great humility, and I will always endeavor to ensure that I manage with equity, judiciously, balanced, and always in keeping with the standing orders of this noble House. Members, it is the beginning of excellent camaraderie. When a member from the opposition side stands up to second the nomination of the member from the government side for Speaker or Deputy Speaker. And I hope as we continue to do our duties on behalf of the people of Jamaica, we will continue to display that type of relationship that keeps our House disciplined and orderly in the benefit of all the people of Jamaica. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm ready to move.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is indeed my pleasure. The pleasure is mine to accept from my colleagues the position of being Deputy Speaker of this noble House. And I too affirm that I will work diligently along with my colleagues on both sides to make sure that discipline and order continue to be in this House, as so we followed the standing orders. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next item on the agenda, it would be remiss of me not to thank my predecessor, Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert. I have learned so much because of her leadership. And I must say, even having resigned, our former Speaker spent every day ensuring that I was fully prepared to take up the mantle on her departure. It is a pleasure to find individuals who love Jamaica and the work of the Parliament to the extent that whatever is happening, the people of Jamaica come first. Former Speaker, I personally thank you for your service, and I am expecting that you will be there along with other former speakers, both here in the House and those who are in retirement, to continue to guide my hand. Thank you, Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert. Statement by ministers. My apology, I see a hand around there.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let me, too, add my bit of congratulations to yourself being elevated to the lofty position of Speaker of this Honourable House, and to your deputy, Mr. Heroy Clark. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So let me offer my congratulations to both. But Madam Speaker, I could not sit here and not say a word or two about Mrs. Marissa Dalrymple-Filbert in her role as a Member of Parliament for a very rural constituency of Southern Trelawney, and the excellent service that she gave to her constituents and indeed to the people of Jamaica. She is from a family that traditionally has extended not only their hands but their home to the less fortunate in our society. As a trained lawyer, many times she had to represent persons without being paid, and that did not deter her from continuing her strive and her work to ensure that justice was not only done, but also appeared to be done. I am aware, because I chair an organization that she's still a member of, that the people of Southern Trelawney are going through what you would call withdrawal syndrome, because they love their Mama D, and she loved them equally. Indeed, a lot of the development infrastructurally, personally, and community-wise, she has been there with them over the last 20 years. I know she has unfinished business in the constituency, but I am confident that those who hold the positions to ensure that the Troy Bridge is completed, because this is one of the issues she has left undone. We wish her well. We have all learned from her, and as a rural member of Parliament, she has offered guidance to me to treat with the issues of rural Jamaica. And a lot of persons are not sensitive to these issues. Mrs. Dalrymple-Filbert was a stalwart. She stood head and shoulders.
Hold a moment, please, member. I was hoping that we would have spent the time to do some detailed tributes on behalf of our former speaker. And I am making sure that we commence operating our procedures in this parliament in such a way that no one from either side carry out a debate or abuse the proceedings. So if given the latitude, one would expect that you would be brief, and the intent is that all of us in the House do our full tributes, because it could never be that a small thank you is what we have for our former speaker. So I am going to allow you 1 minute to wrap up out of respect, and I am asking you to do so, member, wrap up.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. But now that I have finished my opening remarks, but Madam Speaker, thank you very much, and I await that time when you allow members to give a more detailed tribute to the lady.
Thank you so much, member. Statement by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the National Irrigation Commission Limited for the period 2020-2021. Ministry Paper number 85 of 2023 entitled Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the National Irrigation Commission Limited for the year ended March 31, 2021. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica for the financial year 2021-2022. Annual Report of the Jamaica Tourist Board for the financial year 2021-2022. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica for the financial years 2012 to 2013, 2013 to 2014, 2014 to 2015, and 2015 to 2016. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the SCJ Holding Limited for the period 2017-2018. Ministry Paper number 86 of 2023 entitled Annual Report of the SCJ Holdings Limited for the year ended March 31, 2018. And the third, Supplementary Estimates for the financial year 2023-2024.
There may be a recommittal of announcement. We are just verifying the date for the receipt of one of our Auditor General's report so that I can determine if it is to be tabled today. Member Robinson.
Speaker, you may have preempted me. There are two issues that carry over from your predecessor. One relates to the Attorney General's opinion on the tabling of both the Integrity Commission and the Auditor General reports. And I'm asking if the opinion can be shared with the Parliament. And secondly, I was going to ask you about the Yes, and I was going to ask you about the third Auditor General's report, which was sent to the House but not tabled, and when that report would be tabled.
Member Robinson, as I have just taken the Speaker's chair, I will endeavor to respond to you on at the next sitting, Tuesday coming. I have seen at least one report. I've asked the clerk to verify the date received. And just for the benefit of the House, it is a discussion that has been ongoing. My intention is to also have a discussion with the Auditor General so that we have the clarity in terms of when the report is actually filed with the Ministry. Once I do so, I will indicate what my suggestion is to her. My express view is that we find a way to ensure we know that the report is tabled at the Ministry itself, because ministers continue to indicate that for public bodies, they are not aware of some of the audits executed. There is one particular special audit that has been sitting in the Speaker's office. It is one for Transport Authority. It's a special audit, and I'm just trying to verify the date. So before Parliament is concluded, that is why I indicated I would ask for a recommittal, because I'm just doing a verification, and then we would move forward with the process. In respect of your other questions, if you do not mind, I would appreciate the time to just pull the records again and come back to you with a response. I am not of the mind to change any of the rulings of the Speaker at this time. as would have been done for all speakers, yes, I take my responsibility as speaker going forward, and the rulings and determination that we had prior and the standing order that we had prior is what will continue to pertain, but I will be doing my own review. So, Member Robinson, until next Tuesday. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to ask that these matters, a number of matters from the Minister of Finance should be dealt with, but can I ask that we move on until he is in the House so we can recommit? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
In respect of the Minister of Finance, we would have also received an update. We, as indicated by House Leader, will continue and, if necessary, may have to take a recess. Yes, we will do a double check. Questions and answers to questions?
Madam Speaker, I have a set of questions which would have been tabled in March of this year. I have colleagues on this side who have tabled questions before me. Those questions are months outstanding. I had gotten assurances from the House Leader, not the one sitting, but the substantive House Leader, that those questions would have been answered before we went on summer recess. We are now in September, and there's no indication as to when those questions are going to be answered. A part of the role of the Parliament is to hold the executive accountable, and it means that when questions are asked to ministers, they should answer within the 21-day period. It cannot be that, as almost a normal course, we have questions that are unanswered months after the due date. There's no indication as to when these questions are going to be answered, and we just continue as if it's normal. I would urge you, as one of your responsibilities, to please hold the ministers to account to answer the questions that are tabled in their names.
Madam Speaker, sorry for the inconvenience, but can I ask for a recommittal of notices of motions given orally? Madam Speaker, apparently the bill nor the third supplementary is not here as yet, so kind of continue with the agenda.
Member from St. Andrew Southeastern, Member Robinson, in respect of the statement you made, questions and answers to questions, I ensure that I appraise myself of the rules in that regard, and the members of the executive will also have pressure from the Speaker through the House Leader to ensure that our questions and answers to questions follow the requisite rule. There is the provision for extension, and there is the provision for discretion. It will be among the discussions had with the leader of the government and the opposition leader of business. Thank you. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, there will be two main items this afternoon. It is the debate and completion of an act to amend the law reform, zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, which will be taken by the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, and then thereafter the second supplementary budget will also be tabled. Madam
You design the color, right? For the red is gold. Red is
Honorable
gold.
Dr. Horace Chang, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security. Would you be so kind as to provide the stand for this paperwork?
Much better.
Thank you. Thank you, Orderly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I begin to make my presentation, is not only express my appreciation to the outgoing Speaker, which I work with her, but I consider it, as I say, it's a good omen that I move the first bill that you'll preside over in passing. Madam Speaker, I recall that it was in September 2017, the first zone of special operation, ZOSO, was declared in the community of Mount Salem. At that time, the Mount Salem community met all the required criteria and demonstrated the requirement for increased security and definite investment in the social and services and infrastructure of that community. Madam Speaker, prior to the establishment of the zone of special operation in Mount Salem, a community in which I have special attachment. I lived there once. The community had been plagued with intense gang-related violence and criminal activities among several gangs operating from the communities within the St. James Police Division. Today, Madam Speaker, having had benefited from the sustained security, social, infrastructural investment within the area, Mount Salem is beginning to show the signs of positive transformation. In addition to Mount Salem, 6 other communities which met the eligibility criteria have been declared zones of special operations: Town, August Town, Greenwich Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, and section of Savannah Mar. They are active, and the residents of these communities are experiencing significant transformative activities within these areas. Madam Speaker, this government understands and is committed to improving the lives and the life of outcome of the people in our vulnerable and volatile communities. It is for this reason that in December 2020, we convened the Joint Select Committee to consider and report on the zones of special operations and do whatever necessary amendment would find practical and useful to make it even more effective. In fact, in these significant instances, Madam Speaker, it's a piece of legislation that enjoys the support of the entire House and the entire community of Jamaica to the far-reaching piece of legislation to seek to bring about significant improvement in a number of challenged communities. The Joint Select Committee mechanism we undertook, through the Joint Select Committee mechanism, we undertook a comprehensive stakeholder-informed review of the legislation, the report of which was tabled in Parliament in January 2022. The work of the Joint Select Committee enabled us to design a more robust and relevant bill as responsive to our current social, cultural, and economic dynamics of those who reside in these volatile communities. Madam Speaker, it took a bit longer than we had hoped to finalize the bill. It was a good bill. There was no fundamental change, but there were some 17 amendments we'll go through in detail further on, and it had the support of the entire committee. But in fact, we went through in great detail over time. The legal and technical teams worked tirelessly despite of the time. I think we have to examine the capacity of our technical team in dealing with these various issues at legislative level. But the bill was tabled just last week in the House. I want to acknowledge the work of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, the Legal Reform Department, the Ministry of Justice, the team of the Attorney General Department, for their invaluable support and their collaborative efforts that have yielded significant returns in the form of this bill. I wish also to place on record in my commendation of the policy and legal teams from the Ministry of National Security, the units from the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the Jamaica Defense Force, who, though small in numbers, are an effective team of professionals who did the heavy lifting in bringing this bill to the Parliament. I want to thank the stakeholders who made submissions to the Joint Select Committee of Parliament, Madam Speaker. I refer to the Ministry of Justice, Jamaica Police Federation, Jamaica Social Investment Fund, Peace Management Initiative Western, the City Security Secretariat, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Office of Public Defender, Violence Prevention Alliance, UWI Mona Law School, and the United Nations Development Program. My sincere gratitude to the technical team of the House of Representatives, along with the Jamaica Printing Service. It is the continued commitment and dedicated service of these stakeholders which has led to the advancement of this legislation. Madam Speaker, the law reforms on special operations, special security, and community development measures act was designed with a view to facilitate social transformation, community development measures that are essential for public order and maintaining the rule of law. This, Madam Speaker, is to be accomplished and is being accomplished through a clear hold and build strategy. Madam Speaker, all 7 zones continue to advance along the clear hold and build path, with the Mount Salem division being at the most advanced stage of the build phase. Though they are at different stages, the people experience with immediacy the transformative effect of their community and the restoration of hope that comes with ZOSO. And before I go clause by clause, Madam Speaker, may I express my gratitude to and appreciation to the members of the Joint Select Committee on both sides of the House. I think it's a committee that could be considered a model for cooperation and collaboration. We work together, and although there are 17 small but very significant amendments, the discussion through the Joint Select Committee was collegial and productive and gave direction for the development of this particular piece of legislation. It's a piece of legislation that enjoys the full support of the entire House and the entire country. It is indeed a far-reaching piece of legislation designed to take the work of government into a number of communities that are considered challenged and volatile in a more positive way, and I'm confident we'll bring out the kind of results we wish. We have 7 zones. 3 are in the build phase, the other 4 are still in the hold phase, and I know that the Jamaica Social Investment Fund is looking at the required budget to expand that build phase into other areas, but not only into the other 4 zones, but based on the long-standing socio-economic survey by the Planning Institute of Jamaica, and the continued review, and by the continued monitoring by the police, Jamaica Constabulary Force, of the violence data, and other factors that affect the social environment in many communities, and having a good knowledge of the physical infrastructure of our challenged communities, we intend that this should be expanded to a number of areas across Jamaica. I think that the expansion is anxiously awaited by many of our members of Parliament who have such communities. The Ministry is, in fact, undertaking to initiate some of the activities, even where we have not declared zones, because we have identified through the work in the zones and by one review of past performances that we can introduce programs through the various MDAs, the government, into communities that are challenged by activities that we consider fit the spectrum of zones, but may not yet reach that level in terms of the level of violence, but we have to start the work of the social transformation that is required in those communities. We already have, there is an ongoing program, literally just started, one funded by one partner to look, it's an interministerial collaborative effort with the Ministry of Education, working through some 35 schools to engage these 35 communities and begin that process, not only in ensuring the schools in collaboration, the ministry will be taken to a level that is acceptable to provide quality education, but will interface through the school with the parents and the wider community in dealing with some fundamental challenges in those communities. So, Madam Speaker, the bill proposes to amend 17th section of the Act and to create one new subsection. Madam Speaker, members, I will now take the House through a clause-by-clause analysis of the bill. It won't be long as said there were no major fundamental change, rather, but the changes were designed to make it a better bill. And I think we have successfully concluded that. In respect of Clause 2, Madam Speaker, maybe one of them, a single word, but a very important amendment. The bill proposes the renaming of the Social Intervention Committee as the Social Transformation Committee, which is to seek give direction in the very title of what we're intending to achieve in this particular activity. This amendment is being proposed, Madam Speaker, further to the recommendation of the Joint Select Committee, and the base that the utilization of the term transformation better reflects the nature and ultimate objective of the efforts of the committee and the intent of the law. Additionally, it is proposed that the membership of the Social Intervention Committee be expanded to include a representative of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, as well as a member of the Joint Force who is trained in sensitivity to matters relating to gender-based violence. The bill further proposes, in Clause 3, the introduction of more inclusionary language in the recognition of the protection of the fundamental rights and the freedom of a person residing, working, doing business, and raising families in the zone. It also specifically highlights the need to redirect young persons out of criminal activity as a further object for the legislation, which supports the ministry's policy focus and redirection or diversion of vulnerable persons from criminal activity. The bill further proposes in Clause 4 to increase the initial period in which a zone is declared to be enforced from a period not exceeding 60 days to a period not exceeding 180 days. This time, Madam Speaker, is being introduced to reflect the nature of the zones of special operations as a piece of legislation, while it is designed to improve good order, security, public order, and public safety. The ultimate objective of the bill is to get to the build phase where we set a development program based in an atmosphere of peace and safety that will effect transformation in the community. We need time to do that, and one way to do it is considered by virtue of the experience of the members of the House who have zones that this is a more appropriate level to continue to implement this particular piece of legislation. So this, Madam Speaker, allows more time for the social intervention objectives to be realized and provide a more sustainable environment for the maintenance of law and order. In the first 180 days, which is a clear and beginning of the whole, much of some of the soft intervention can begin. Take a little while longer to get to the longer term. Bills also seeks to amend the circumstances under which a zone can be declared in Section 4. to reflect two distinctive categories, namely, as originally designed, rampant criminality or gang warfare, or high or escalating rate of violence, as well as the threat to the rule of law and public order. Additionally, members, the bill also proposes in Clause 5 to further qualify the authority with whom the Prime Minister and Council will be required to consult before a zone can be extended, as well as to increase the period of extension. Madam Speaker, I wish to inform the members of this House that among the proposals received in the last round of consultation was to further increase the period of extension, as agreed by the Joint Select Committee, from 120 days to 180 days. Madam Speaker, the government having had the benefit of observing the implementation of 7 zones of special operations, also deemed it practical to standardize and align the duration of the extension with initial period of declaration, thereby maximizing the time available for the Social Transformation Committee while balancing the need for prioritizing the safety of the citizens through the continued presence and efforts of law enforcement in their community. The bill also seeks, Madam Speaker, in Clause 6, to expand the category of persons who may be required to make a statement to Parliament following the declaration of a zone, to include the Minister with responsibility for national security. The bill further proposes in Clause 9 to increase the period required for the Joint Command through the Commissioner of Police or the Chief of Defence Staff to report to National Security Council from every 10 days to every 30 days, and in Clause 10 to expand the circumstance under which the Prime Minister in Council may suspend the operation of the zone where it is considered necessary to do so. Pause again, Madam Speaker, indicate this 30-day report allows the Minister or the Prime Minister to answer urgent questions to members in the House who may have questions relating to the conduct of the zones of special operation. While the standardized reports remain at 180 days, there is the facility to be able to respond appropriately and maintain the kind of vigilance that we want in implementing this particular program. So the Member of Parliament or the Member of the House who have a concern with the quality of the execution, whether in terms of security or in terms of the implementation of the bill phase, they may ask those questions and not to wait the 180 days and get an appropriate and the correct answer. It is also being proposed in Clause 11, Madam Speaker, that the determination of the identity of the members of the Joint Force be vested alternatively in the Commissioner of Police and the Chief of Staff. Madam Speaker, the bill further proposes in Clause 12 to vest the authority to impose a curfew in the Commissioner of Police and the Chief of Defence Staff or their designates not below the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police and Lieutenant Colonel, respectively. It also proposed to introduce the requirement for a notice to be displayed upon the establishment of a coordinate and imposition of a curfew to enable persons within the zone to be made aware of those activities. That to be at easy, accessible points within the community that all community members are aware are not taken by surprise by the imposition or the start of a curfew or a cordon search. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the clause further proposed to facilitate the expansion of the vantage points at which the notice ought to be established to include such areas outside of the zones, such as a post office or any other near community facility. This will facilitate the notification of individuals outside of the zone who may require entry into the zone, that they are fully aware of what are the current security operations and measures being taken, and therefore can proceed according to in good order. It is further proposed, Madam Speaker, that an offence be introduced for the breach of a curfew without reasonable excuse. In this regard, therefore, the bill proposes a fine not exceeding $1 million in the parish court and default of payment thereof, imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months. Madam Speaker, in Clause 15, the bill seeks to introduce a new administrative process to provide for the custody and or disposal of items seized through the involvement of a justice of the peace. Currently, Madam Speaker, such circumstances are administered by an officer of the Joint Command, and this new includes and provides an appropriate separation of functions from the operational personnel. That is when they're carrying out their duties, if goods are seized from a vendor, it is not the operational person who will make a decision as to what happened, but in consultation with the Justice of the Peace and Command, a civil authority, essentially. In Clause 16, Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to qualify the time period in which a person arrested and detained when a zone should be taken before a Justice of the Peace or for an order to be made. The clause further proposes to increase the period of time in which the person may be remanded in custody from 24 to 48 hours, and provides for the inclusion of the term remand center in the list of places in which a person who is arrested may be detained. The recommendation to further qualify the designation of the appropriate institution for detention seeks to address circumstances contemplated in the legislation where a person is detained for having been reasonably suspected of committing an offense, but not as a consequence of a conviction. Madam Speaker, the clause further proposes the inclusion of a new subsection aimed at empowering the joint force to exercise its powers of arrest and detention outside of the boundaries of the zone in cases involving hot pursuits. In these cases, Madam Speaker, a person who attempts to flee arrest in a zone could be pursued outside of the zone for the purpose of being taken into custody. It's also further proposed that a new provision reflected in Clause 16A be included to establish the offense of threatening, assaulting, obstructing, or hindering a member of the joint force, and a penalty be imposed reflecting a fine not exceeding $1 million or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 1 year. This particular amendment strengthens the legislation, but essentially it allows one for if an vehicle or individual is identified having committed an offense in the zone and they are being tracked by the joint force, they are allowed to track them and detain them without any limitations on how far they may go. Remembering that, remember, the joint force includes members of the Jamaica Defense Force. And in order to detain someone outside of the zone, legislators have provided to allow for that. And that's the purpose of this extension, along with, of course, we have known in one or two committees where individuals have have assaulted members of the force unnecessarily. And we wish to provide a legislative authority to penalize such individuals. Madam Speaker, in Clause 17, the bill proposes to increase the time period in which a person may be held in custody without or on order from a Justice of the Peace from 12 to 36 hours before the prescribed officer is required to investigate the circumstances of his detention. The proposed extension, Madam Speaker, would facilitate greater operational and administrative flexibility in completing the necessary investigations that may be required in the interest of justice and sustainably restoring the rule of law within the required zone. The bill proposed in Clause 18 an amendment to the provision in respect of the treatment of persons arrested or detained to include, in addition to any member of the joint force who is required to facilitate the receipt of medical attention by a person in need of same, any person in charge of the supervision of any individual arrested and detained. This amendment broadens the category of persons with responsibility for the care of persons being held in custody arising from operations in the zone. It really means that if one requires medical attention, there must be someone in the team who can take them immediately for such attention. Madam Speaker, the clause further proposes to qualify the criteria for visitation of persons arrested or detained and permits some same in the circumstances having regard to matters of security and safety of persons. The proposed amendment seeks to balance the right to visitation with the operational risk being faced on the ground at the time. In Clause 24, Madam Speaker, the bill proposed that the Minister approve the terms of reference of each committee as opposed to the current language in the Act, which imposes an administrative responsibility on the Minister to cause the term of reference to be prepared and transmitted to him for approval. Madam Speaker, the law forms zones of special operations, special security, and community development measures, Amendment Bill 2023, is the accumulation of the input from technical, policy, legal, community, and civil society groups. The proposed amendments are in the best interest of the people who reside within these vulnerable communities and volatile, and therefore in the best interest of the country, and reflects in many ways the strength of our democracy, as we not only had the Joint Steering Committee members commenting, making suggestions, and reviewing submissions, and submissions came from an extremely wide cross-section of society who have the basic interest of not only ensuring law and order in society, but to restore hope to the challenged communities, as we refer to the many communities where we have extensive violence beside social and environmental decay. I therefore commit this bill, Madam Speaker, to this Honourable House and ask that members consider and support the proposal in the bill, as they will further strengthen the legislative toolkit that is available to combat crime, violence in our society, and restore hope to our many people living in difficult circumstances. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Oh, no, happy that I have now gotten it.
You had my eyes. I was looking particularly for the name of your constituency, member from St. Catherine South. Just to let you know, I have missed you. You may proceed. Please turn on your mic, Member Jackson.
Madam Speaker, I have to try to compose myself to respond. Madam Speaker, let me acknowledge and congratulate you on your ascension to the speakership of the House. I was out when the exercise took place. Madam Speaker, as the Minister indicated, the bill before us is not a controversial one. And to me, the process that brought this bill before us now is one that ought to be commended, ought to be applauded. And more so, the chairman, I'll say openly, he was a very good chairman in the committee. Yes, he was very facilitatory, and he was very cooperative. Not always that way, I must say, Madam Chair, but in the instant case, he provided that leadership to the committee deliberations. And then we can say at this stage, that it reflected true collaborative work to get what we have. As you know, Madam Speaker, this bill, the original bill, came about in a very, how should I say, rocky way, with a number of amendments, both in this House and in the Senate, before it finally came into being. This attempt is an attempt to make that bill a better bill. So it is not a perfect bill, but it represents some steps to make the situation better in light of the experiences that we have had, Madam Speaker. The Minister made mention particularly of Section 18 and the insertions that make provision to treat persons who are ill or not doing well in the zones. Because while we're trying to fight crime, we must not appear to be opponents of the people and their well-being. We must be appreciative of the need to ensure that their well-being is secured in the process of bringing about order, bringing about a reduction in crime and violence. But, Madam Speaker, I must say, I'm a bit disappointed that this discussion is taking place now and not over a year ago. as was indicated by the minister and is set out in the bill itself. The report came to the House in January 2022. That's over a year and a half. Bills like these, which are to deal with one of the foremost challenges facing the country, crime and violence, cannot be dealt with in this kind of way. There must be some greater sense of urgency. We have to let government function with great urgency to deal with urgent problems. And it's not problems in the abstract way. We're talking about life and death. The level of murders taking place, the level of criminality taking place in the country is, as we know it, extremely high. And when it falls in our lap as government to put in place legislative support to assist those out there, the police and the JDF, in the fight against crime and violence, we have to be more responsive. We have to move with some alacrity. Why is it that this final bill is taking over 18 months to come to this stage, not even to bring it into law yet? Still have some more leaps to take. It would be irresponsible of me not to point that out in this discussion, Madam Speaker. Not merely to criticize what have happened, but to make sure we don't repeat it. That is what is important. Madam Speaker, in the committee, the minister indicated, for example, the change in the term from intervention to transformation. There was much discussion and debate around that because all the members on both sides appreciate the importance of making sure that we seek to transform the communities rather than merely having interventions. But, Madam Speaker, that must go beyond words. That must be manifested in the programs, sustainable programs that are put in place. Many members of Parliament on both sides, with the upsurge of violence, have begged the government to institute zones of special operations in their areas where you have high increases in criminal activity. So there's no hostility to the presence, but what we want is substance out of it. We have said on this side over and over, hard policing is not enough. We need social intervention to go parallel with hard policing. That's why we have supported the zones of special operations and have emphasized the need for social intervention, adequate social intervention and sustainable social intervention, because we must transform communities so that we can have a transformed country. And it's not going to happen overnight. It means that we must put in place the human capacities, the social workers, who don't show up in a big ceremony and then after that nothing happens, that they are there on the ground. And the truth of the matter, Madam Speaker, we have enough experiences in this country to tell us that for social transformation, you need a strong cadre of social workers. The SDC, for example, they don't really have the capacity to do the kind of social intervention that is needed. They don't have the resources. They don't have the monetary allocation to recruit and maintain the human capital that is needed for that intervention. So I'm making this plea, Madam Speaker, that while we have full agreement, a convergence around these modifications, because that's what this bill is a modification of what we had before. While we converge in doing that, let us recommit ourselves not only in words, but in the allocation of the resources that can make this bill achieve some of the things that it set out to achieve at the outset. Madam Speaker, we must not talk, when we talk about the bill phase must not be about the physical building. It must be about the social infrastructure building. That's the kind of building we want to see take place in the bill phase of the ZOSOs. So, as I said, the opposition is in full support of the bill before us. We just urge that we make the provision in this meaningful without undue delay. Jamaica begs us to do that with some urgency. We must respond. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We'll now acknowledge the member from St. Andrews Southwest.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I rise, let me also add my own words of commendation to you assuming the chair. We had a conversation while we were testing the mic a few days ago, and I hope you will remember some of the commitments you made while you were not speaker then, because I'm hoping to see you do them in the chair. You're a witness. There you go. There you go. Madam Speaker, I really wanted to speak, and not for very long. I wanted to give my commendation to the chairman of the committee and the members who served. And I am pleased today to see the changes. We would have read them in the reports when it was tabled. But particularly, I wanted to single out the collaboration that has led us to this. And I do so particularly because, Madam Speaker, over the last couple of years, every time a member of the opposition would have noted something that we were not pleased with, there were others, I won't name where they were from, but there were others who pointed to the fact that we were not committed to actually dealing with the issue of crime and violence. And I believe that the approach taken by the committee in working on the amendments and getting us to this stage proves that to be a lie. And it is obviously clear that we all have the same goal. So I'm very pleased for that, and I believe it's a signal to the rest of Jamaica, and we can stop pretending that we are on different sides of this issue of crime and violence, which is so important to us in Jamaica in terms of stemming that. So that's one. The other, that I sat there listening, Madam Speaker, and it is a thought that I've had as we have been discussing it every time, is how do we measure success? And it is good to actually hear the reports, see the money that is spent, talk about the activities. But again, as we are saying, we're looking at transformation. And when I read even the reports, I don't get a sense that we are clear as to what will constitute success in these ZOSOs and over the time. I know that it is difficult to set a time, but I think it would be important to at least identify what are those indicators that would say to us that we are in fact making progress and that we are having success. And lastly, I just want to echo that yes, we want to make sure that there are some physical changes. Yes, we want to make sure that there is that interaction, the committee that is established, discussion that is ongoing. But I believe it is also extremely important to make sure as we look for changes in communities, we look for changes in people's lives and the members who make up the society coming from these communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Honorable Minister. Member from St. Andrew Western.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too want to congratulate you on your elevation to the Speaker's chair, and I am heartened by the way in which we have begun this session, and I urge you to show the same equanimity and balance in your chairmanship. So we look forward to it. Madam Speaker, I want to commend I want to commend the Minister and the committee for the work. The Minister would have known that from the onset, I have been one to call for this kind of balance in the fight against crime and violence. And that it was not just the hard policing that was critical, but that this aspect of the work was very critical to the success of the fight. And so I'm very pleased today to see that the amendments are before us. And I'm paying particular attention to sections 23 and 24 of the Act that is being amended with the introduction of the Social Intervention Committee. And Madam Speaker, I think that work is critical. The Minister also mentioned that the fact is that those communities that have not been declared zones of special operation, but that the Planning Institute over the years have identified as communities with particular challenges, that the work towards those committees continue, the assessments continue, and the interventions continue to preempt some of what can be. We know there are challenges, and we've seen some of them, the Minister and I, certainly in parts of my constituency, New Haven in particular, where we have gone to deal with aspects of the situation there. We see situation that with some proactive steps, some things might have been avoided, and really some difficult situation might have been avoided. And so I say to the Minister that I look forward very much to the fact that the committee will look at some of those situations and begin to address those situations. But I think, Minister, that with this balanced approach, I think you will see that you'll get a more fulsome support for the activities of the forces, the command, both the police and the military, in their operation, because we believe now there is the possibility for this balanced approach that I believe will make the fight a more effective fight. So thank you, Minister, and we look forward to its implementation, the monitoring, and the evaluation as we go along. Thank you.
Minister of National Security.
That's not that nice. That's not that nice. No, the impact of the new speaker is being felt. All contribute. Madam Speaker, in closing this step, we just thank the members who have contributed for their support in this debate and the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Bill 2023. Just to reassure the members, the expansion to other areas will take place, not as rapidly as they would like or I would like. I'd like to have moved into a large number of those spaces for many, many reasons, maybe 30, 40 at a time, but the current budget hasn't quite allowed it, but we'll be getting there, and we have in fact begun to move some of the programs under the part of the program which are now being funded through a different mechanism, because the need, as the member from Southwest Central points out, to keep accurate data and monitoring and evaluation of programs on an ongoing real-time basis is beginning to take place through the Citizen Business Council, which is the head of all government agencies involved, permanent secretaries, relevant statutory bodies, and there's a secretariat that does provide a quarterly report and specific activities, including social activities, social, not hardcore activities of the infrastructure type, family issues, educational issues, counseling, as we go through the community health care and things like registration, which is legitimizing identity, all the program that goes in through the Ministry of Social Security. In fact, in one committee, I've done a database to identify on the population, which identify all the required needs at all levels. So the next time you look, we look at the PATH program, for example, we'll see that all the people should be there, not just those who have come out or who have been identified will be on the program by virtue of a very empirically, statistically based approach. And we hope to take this across the island. Because indeed, Madam Speaker, the fact is that PATH currently hosts nearly 400,000 individuals. There may be, if you fine-tune it, there may be not more than 20,000 people who are not just 500, and they may only have about 40,000 outside who should be on it. But those 40,000 tend to be at the very bottom of the ladder, and the object is to catch all that is required. The program was funded, and the government of Jamaica, and in association with the European Union, the approach is to go through the budget support rather than through large projects which had their place. But one of the challenges you have with projects is that a significant amount of them will go off into consultancies and reviews rather than strengthening the agencies of government that do the actual work, whether it is the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the PIOJ, the SDC, and other agencies within the community, and something like Jamaica Social Investment Fund, body which does excellent work wherever they go, and we have to increase their funding. I would take pleasure in indicating to the House and to the country that we have already identified, and with the help of the private sector, with the partnership with the private sector and government, we have now settled on establishing what we might call, like to call it, first Live Good Wellness Center in the parish of St. James. And St. James was chosen by the research consultants on the program to see as one of the parishes that have the highest level of emotional challenges by a young population. Because the level of violence in today's Jamaica is not just a matter of criminal violence. There's an emerging trend of interpersonal violence that is particularly challenging and has really to do with criminality. You have family members quarreling and they respond violently. So uncle kills nephew, nephew kills a cousin, and some I would even go over, as I've been seeing in recent weeks. Even children are getting involved. And the most brutal murders are beyond policing. We find it's a matter of intra-family and interpersonal squabbles where individuals are killed by contract killers, which is a feature of criminality that is now giving deep concern to myself and to the leadership in the security forces. The police have made adjustments, but it's an extremely difficult challenge to prevent a contract killer operating, as I've seen. And my grief goes out to the families who have been affected this week, but we have seen that while our numbers are not something to celebrate, we are behind in the homicide numbers by 12.8%. Other major crimes are done by bigger percentages, but it has shown a steady slope, if it's an even narrow angle. What I mentioned because this week we saw a triple and a quadruple homicide. Very, very, very worrying and traumatic in society. But both were obviously, as by the police, contract killing. Right? Now the particular one in St. Catherine, which is drawing the attention of the entire country this morning, involved 4 women. Let's give thanks there were 5 children and they were not affected. But this is a very remote area, relatively speaking. The member of Parliament this year was up there, but it's relatively speaking to say an urban center where you have characteristics of gang violence, etc. So it's far out, and a big farm. And we found that 4 individuals were set upon and executed. 3 of the individuals, in fact, were literally recent residents. 2 were actually helpers for practical purposes who had come to assist a sick person who died last week. And then the mother of the lady who runs the farm came in like about 48 hours before, the day before or 40 before, to visit. So, but we see this kind of thing happening. It's very difficult to prevent. In the short term, we have intercepted a number of these before, which is not known, and thankfully we have been able to intercept more, but it's difficult to stop all of them. it will have to come from significant changes in behavior pattern. Hold on. All right, that's good. In closing, Madam Speaker, I said I take pleasure in indicating that this new center, while the physical infrastructures are this new school building, cottage, teacher's cottage, the private sector is assisting in rehabilitating, and the Ministry of Finance has given the approval for a staff of 10, which be employed through the Ministry of Health. That will be two clinical psychologists, psychiatric aides, psychiatric nurse, along with the required supporting staff in that. And the first of a model of centers that will be designed to provide professional counseling at all levels, including our young people in schools and community clubs across the island. As object of the new direction of social intervention, not only to fix the buildings, provide better service to our education institution, but quality health service to our public health facilities designed to ensure we can impact and reach some of these young adults before they get to the point of committing any kind of heinous crime. That, Madam Speaker, is the objective we set out to do. So, Madam Speaker, the law reform zone of special operations, special community and community measures acts as one of the most practical, impactful pieces of legislation that Jamaica is currently enforcing, and a piece of legislation enjoys the support of all lawmakers. Development within the zones have been substantial and meaningful to the people of these areas. The zones of special operation have been and continue to be a critical component of the government's crime prevention and crime reduction strategy and a vehicle for development in these communities. Critically, this government has changed the focus of work in vulnerable communities from project-based social intervention to holistic social transformation programs. We have strategically targeted vulnerable and volatile communities to ensure sustained transformation with these areas. This amended bill will enable us to continue and to expand this transformative work, restoring good order, public safety within these communities, and support. We restore hope to these difficult areas and the citizens of these areas. I seek the support of the entire House as we now move to take it back by clause. The question, Madam Speaker, sorry. I've been called to a debate, Madam Speaker, and I call for the second reading.
Thank you, Minister. The question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clerk.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act, read a second time.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Minister, we are now at committee. I would like to now put clause 1, or would you like?
Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, I think there are no corrections to the bill, and it was done through the Joint State Committee. I think members are quite familiar with the changes, all 18 amendments. I'd like to put the whole bill, if you don't mind. All right?
Minister, I'm sure you know how I feel as chair. I now put clauses 1 and 2. I put the schedule, and I put title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Minister?
I now ask that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act, read a third time and passed.
Madam Speaker, the other matter, the tabling of the third supplement. The matter is still pending. We're awaiting from the printing office the actual third supplementary. So I would move, Madam Speaker, that the House be adjourned for 15 minutes. Sorry. We'll just do everything when we return. Yeah. So I ask for suspension.
Members, the question is that we suspend the sitting of the House for approximately 15 minutes to facilitate the receival of the third supplementary estimates. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
For parliamentarians wants to hear from you. Send your opinions in writing by Tuesday, October 3, 2023 to Clerk to the Houses, Gordon House, 81 Duke Street, Kingston. Or email us at clark@japarliament.gov.jm. Visit the Parliament's website at www.japarliament.gov.jm for details.
The National Family Planning Board now presents a parenting tip from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Men are what their mothers made them.
The theme for this month's Child's Month really emphasizes children feeling safe and protected. And this is certainly something that we want children to experience while they are at school. you know, schools have their challenges, but we really have been trying to encourage the students as well to interact in a way that creates safety, and also to encourage the students, you know, the parents and students to be safe. One of the things that we've been doing is we've been having parent seminars. These seminars really serve to empower parents so that they can care for the children better, because the children are in the parents' care. So that's one of the things that we've really tried to emphasize for Child's Month.
All Jamaicans to know that child abuse is not just an issue for the government, it's an issue for all Jamaicans. So we need everybody to help us to protect our children. If you know of a child who is being victimized, a child who is abused or neglected, just make that report so we can get that child the help they need. Calling or reporting is easy. All you have to do is remember to call 211. If you are an adult, if you're a child, if you are in church, in your community group, wherever you are, once you are aware there's a child who is in need of care and protection, just be the one and call 211.
Remember that big project the government announced them was going to from when? You ever get yourself a wonder what happened to it? Stop wonder like an outsider and start move like the country belong to you. You have a right to publicly owned information, and the Access to Information Act gives you that power. I know you have enough questions about how government are run or not run, so let me show you how it works. Say mosquito spraying going on in your community, your children asthmatic and you want to know what chemicals are in it. Or what about that Auditor General report on a public official getting twice his salary with no proper approval? Is your taxes and you want to know if they paid it back? First, do some basic searching to see what is already on government websites. If you don't see what you're looking for, make a formal ATI request by completing the application form on the ATI site or sending a letter or email. And remember, you don't have to say why you need it. It is your right to know. Make sure you send your request to the right agency, and once they confirm receipt, they get 30 calendar days to provide the information. A maximum of 60 if extra time is needed. Yes, I know you want access to everything, but sensitive documents are protected from the public for up to 20 years. For example, documents that would expose a citizen's personal privacy, or those dealing with cabinet discussions, the Governor General's office, or information on the investigative activities of the security forces. Any public officer who tries to destroy or hide any official document can be sanctioned. And if you're having difficulties, the ATI unit will help. So, what if the chemicals in the mosquito spray are toxic? What if the agency did not even try to get back the money they paid out? Call or email your MP. Share the concern, because as your elected representative, they can represent your questions to the government ministers in the House. Remember, it is the job of parliamentarians to monitor and hold the government to account on your behalf. Is not every country gives citizens this kind of power, you know? And at 20 years we have this law, and we barely use it. So access information and mind your business, Jamaica. Visit jampja.org today to see what information we access to make it easier for you to hold the government to account. Let's do our job to make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Most Jamaicans will tell you corruption in politics is deep-rooted, and I just saw it said, and nothing can do about that. But actually, there is, and another 152 countries are doing it. It's called asset declaration, and it works best where citizens themselves understand it and help to ensure the law is enforced. Corruption happens when public officials abuse their power to benefit themselves, family, or associates. Jamaica's Integrity Commission Act was designed to prevent corruption, and here are 5 things you should know. 1. Under this law, every year MPs and senators must report what they earn, own and owe, and if they don't, they'll be sanctioned. 2. Their report must include the same kind of information for their wife or husband and children. 3. If they get a gift worth more than $100,000 from anyone who's not family, they must declare it. 4. A summary of the declarations of our Prime Minister and opposition leader must be published where the public can read it. 5. Parliamentarians can now be prosecuted by the Integrity Commission. They can be fined up to $2 million or serve up to 2 years in prison if they don't file the declaration or if they give false information, and $500,000 for not filing on time or ignoring requests for information. Unfortunately, our parliamentarians made changes that prevent the public from knowing when they've broken the law or when they're being investigated. We really need to change that. Visit jampja.org to find out more about the Act and to track if your MP is obeying this law. If they're not, JAMP's MP Tracker will help you write, tweet, or call your MP. Ask them, you submit your declaration yet? The Integrity Commission clear you? Let's help the Parliament stay honest. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Do you wish there were a way your community could get funding to improve a school, health center, sports program, and more? There is! It's the Constituency Development Fund. Here are a few things you probably didn't know about the CDF and how you can make it work better for you. The CDF policy promotes citizen participation in community development and protection of taxpayers' funds. It outlines that MPs are to meet with citizens at least once every 2 years to agree on the projects needed. You know, it used to be once a year? We should really go back to that. Projects developed without community consultation are not to be approved by the bipartisan CDF Parliamentary Committee. There are 26 government agencies that implement projects, usually for a small fee. Funds are provided directly from the Office of the Prime Minister to the implementing agency, not through the Member of Parliament. The CDF unit monitors project costs and implementation, so if you have questions about how the CDF are run in your community, contact them. To ensure no one project or community gets all the funds, there are 6 project categories with spending limits for each. There must be no less than 5 and no more than 20 projects each year. To learn more, visit jampja.org to view your MP's CDF info and tell them how this fund has impacted you. If you don't see your MP's CDF reports, then put them under little pressure, man. Call, tweet, email. Ask them when they'll submit it and when is the next CDF meeting. Change is possible. It's already happening. What we need is you. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. People always say government must be held accountable. But is whose job to keep government accountable, and what that really mean? Well, you see, when ministers and public officials have to provide answers for decisions made and can face consequences for those actions and decisions, that means they're being held accountable. Keeping government accountable is a key responsibility of our elected representatives, and the Parliament provides special tools or mechanisms just for this. As citizens, we need to understand how they work so we can play our part to ensure that the members of Parliament we elect are using the tools and doing their job well. Here are 4 of the primary tools you should understand and talk to your MP about. Tool number 1, Minister's Statements. To effectively monitor the government, MPs need to stay informed. Every Tuesday when Parliament sits, different cabinet ministers are scheduled to give an update on decisions they're making on our behalf. These updates are called Statements by Ministers. They cover a wide range of national issues that other MPs, media, and citizens may have questions about and wish to examine further. That brings us to tool number 2. What you do when you want information? You ask questions, and that's why we have Question Time. Both opposition and government MPs can submit questions to the Prime Minister or Cabinet Ministers for details on, for example, how a contract was awarded or expenditure to purchase tablets for schools. So if you ever have a question for a government minister, try asking through your MP. After all, that's why they're your political representatives. They should represent your questions and concerns to the government. Tool number 3, parliamentary debates. When cabinet ministers present the government's proposals for new policies, laws, and programs, parliamentary debates allow both opposition and government MPs to air concerns, make suggestions, and endorse proposals. If you ever watch those debates, you know they can get a little fiery. But the debate is important, as it informs decisions and continues until a vote is taken on the way forward. Then we have tool number 4, parliamentary committees. The general sittings of Parliament are not always sufficient for detailed examination of government work, so oversight committees are formed using government and opposition members to do just that. Some committees like the PAC and the PAAC are in place for an entire parliamentary term. Their job is to monitor the use of public funds to find ways to increase value and efficiency while reducing waste and corruption. Cabinet and state ministers are not appointed to oversight committees since they are a part of the government. Some committees are formed when a need arises. For example, joint select committees are formed to review draft policies or legislation or to probe other matters of serious national importance. Members of these committees are both opposition and government MPs and senators, and these committees will usually invite citizens to share their opinions, concerns, and recommendations. So there you have it, 4 accountability tools of Parliament that are used to make sure government run right. Visit jampja.org to find contact information for your MP. Invite them to meet with the community so they can better represent your issues and concerns in Parliament and keep government accountable. Get involved and let's make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
How do bills become law in Jamaica? Laws are made to create order, to ensure our safety, and to protect our rights against abuses by other citizens, organizations, and even the government itself. A bill is a proposal for either a new law or for a change to an existing law. Jamaica's Parliament is responsible for making our laws, and that responsibility is shared between 2 houses. There are 21 parliamentarians appointed from both political parties to the upper house, also known as the Senate. And there are 63 members of Parliament that we, the people, elect to the lower house, also known as the House of Representatives. To pass a law, there is a minimum of 6 stages required in each house. The process can begin in the upper house by a senator or in the lower house by your member of Parliament. And their proposals for a new bill can certainly start with you, the citizen. Now, since the process often begins in the House of Representatives, let's start there. 1. The first stage begins with the introduction by the minister responsible for the bill, followed by the first reading of the bill by the clerk to the houses. This clerk is more like the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer for the Parliament. An announcement of the bill is published in the Gazette. This is a public newsletter that the government uses to inform the citizens of what the Parliament is doing on your behalf. 2. The second reading begins with a summary of the bill by the minister. The main reasons for the bill are discussed both by the government and opposition members to determine if Jamaicans would really be better off with the new law or changes to an existing law. A vote is taken by the House to determine if the bill will move to the committee stage. Sometimes before going to that stage, the minister responsible for the bill can recommend the use of a joint select committee. It's called joint as its members are taken from both the upper and lower house. To benefit from greater consultation, the committee is empowered to invite the public to share their views of the bill in writing or in person, and does so through radio, TV, and newspaper adverts. This joint select committee submits its recommendations to the House of Representatives. The House debates this report, and a vote is taken to determine if the bill should go on to the committee stage, where it is examined by a committee of the whole House. Yes, that's the name. And that's what it is, a committee of all the members of Parliament that carefully examines each clause and makes improvements to ensure the bill will achieve its objectives. As chairman, the Speaker of the House monitors the process to make sure the rules of the House are obeyed and the process moves along smoothly. 4. The Committee of the whole House examines the bill clause by clause, then sends its recommendations for changes to the House of Representatives. This is called the report stage. 5. The bill then passes to the third reading to allow a final opportunity for MPs to make changes before it is sent to senators in the upper house. 6 to 10. In the upper house, the senators go through the same steps we just described. If any changes are made, the bill has to be returned to the House of Representatives for their discussion and approval. Now, if the bill had started in the upper house, it would also have to be returned to them for approval of any changes made by the lower house. 11. Throughout the entire process, the bill is being checked by the Legislative Council. That's the Parliament's lawyer. But before the last step, a copy is sent to the Attorney General of Jamaica for final review and certification. 12. If all is well, the bill is sent to receive the royal assent from the Governor General as the representative of the Queen, Elizabeth II. The bill is now an Act of Parliament. The Act is gazetted, and the rights of Jamaicans are further preserved and protected by a new law.
Tell me something. How much time you ever hear the government announce a project and wonder why they must spend millions on this and not on that? Well, if you think there's nothing you can do about how your money is spent, think again. Jamaica's budget is more than just numbers. It reveals our biggest problems and goals, our plans to fix them, and what to prioritize. We can even call it a promise book of what will be done to improve our lives. Now, let's talk about the 4 stages of the budget cycle so we can understand how it works and get involved. Stage 1. Planning and review. The Ministry of Finance sends out a budget call to every ministry, which outlines the priorities and constraints to guide how those ministries prepare their budget. After ministries submit their drafts, the Finance Ministry reviews, compiles, and sends them to Cabinet for review and approval. Stage 2. Parliamentary debate and approval. The Finance Minister tables all budget documents in the House of Representatives. The Standing Finance Committee, which is all 63 MPs, sits to examine the budget documents, and each minister presents their budget and answers concerns the committee has. The committee's report is then tabled in the House, followed by the estimated expenditure, which is tabled as legislation, called the Appropriations Bill. That's right, the budget of Jamaica is law. The budget debate formally opens. We have presentations from the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, Opposition Leader, and the Shadow Finance Minister. After their presentations, our MPs vote for or against approval. Like all legislation, it goes to the Senate for their approval and then to the Governor General for his royal assent. No later than March 31st, end of the financial year. Stage 3. Implementation. The new financial year begins and approved budgets are sent to ministries. Collecting taxes, borrowing loans, and receiving grants begin. And so does the spending. Stage 4. Budget oversight. Now, this is where citizens don't need permission to get involved. Throughout the year, operations and spending are assessed by internal auditors and the Auditor General's department that makes sure public entities are compliant with laws and that their financial reports are accurate. All Auditor General reports are submitted to our Parliament's Public Accounts Committee for review and cross-examination of public officials. The Ministry of Finance, Integrity Commission, and MOCA also monitor government spending to guard against poor financial management and corruption. It is our job to review these reports, check the findings in the newspaper, and look up if breaches are fixed at jampja.org. If not, ask your MP what he or she has done to ensure public officials are held to account. No more 9-day wonders. So, did the government follow through on their spending and investment promises last year? What promises will next year's budget have? How will they affect you, and how can you ensure that you get what is promised?
For access to the national budget, check out JAMP's easy digital version and contact info for your MP at jampja.org. Then link your MP and see what progress is being made throughout the entire budget cycle. Support JAMP. Let's do our job to make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Traveling to Jamaica? Submit your customs and immigration declaration online for faster processing. Visit the enterjamaica.com portal, complete and submit your declaration prior to departure. Upon arrival, proceed to the immigration kiosk and swipe your passport to confirm your trip details and declaration. Once done, proceed to the customs hall to retrieve your luggage and final clearance. The online C5, making air travel easier. You may contact us or the Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency for more information.
The Joint Select Committee of Parliament considering job descriptions, codes of conduct and performance standards for parliamentarians wants to hear from you. Send your opinions in writing by Tuesday, October 3, 2023 to Clerk to the Houses, Gordon House, 81 Duke Street, Kingston. Or email us at clark@japarliament.gov.jm. Visit the Parliament's website at www.japarliament.gov.jm for details.
There's a certain level of degenerate behavior that we have seen among our criminals, our criminal population. We've seen where it becomes a thing that people are willing to kill people for money, and that family members who should be taking care of each other, who should be looking about the interest of other family members, are not doing that, but are instead over property, over wealth, over items, are actually arranging and premeditating the killing of other family members. We saw that, as I say, most recently in this case. We saw it at an earlier case in Trelawney. We saw that in a case in St. Mary, where this sort of behavior has been playing out. My warning and advice in this case, or in these cases, is that even if you're disposed to do that, the likelihood of you getting away with it is quite low. In all of these cases, we have persons in custody. These cases have been solved. There may be one or two people we are still after, but largely you will not get away with it. Our intelligence resources are adequate to find out what has happened in these cases, and our responsiveness and our investigators have been following up very rapidly. Some of these cases are wrapped in 24 to 48 hours, some take longer. But that is the case. So my warning is that we don't do this. The other point that I'd like to make is that what we've been seeing is a certain fluidity of criminal action. People move back and forth across the country to commit crimes, to make arrangements with other gangs to do crimes on their behalf. And because we've seen this fluidity of operation, we have put in measures along our roadways to intercept and interrupt this and to detect. We are getting good intelligence on how people are moving and the routes they're taking. What we have seen is, again, the fluidity across police divisions in Lower Kingston, where disputes in one division play out in the other. The borders that we have set as our traditional policing borders create static lines, of which, of course, criminals don't recognize, and they fluidly move back and forth. And in that regard, we have implemented a number of strategies to deal with that fluidity across the lower belt. We have an increase our agility. We have, within the next few weeks, a whole rollout of a quick response and quick reaction team that can respond across all of that belt. They will be trained in the tactical use, and are being trained in the tactical use of motorcycles and their weapons to respond quickly to gang activities and other threats to the lower part of Kingston. We're continuing that process, and it's going to expand up into the northern part of Kingston and St. Andrew. We're also restructuring how we police Kingston as we speak, to remove some of those artificial boundaries that were traditional into a more fluid, citywide policing strategy.
Since 2016, we did about 6 major seizures. And of those 6 seizures, we have worked jointly with our international partners. One person was convicted last year in Miami. There is another seizure that took place in 2017, which led us to the investigation of the Dexter Street gang. 18 persons were arrested and the main witness disappeared. Out of that, the main perpetrator was arrested just December of last year, and has been charged with the trafficking of those firearms, among other charges. And we are working jointly with our international partner in respect to that same matter. There is another matter where 119 firearms were intercepted in Miami. That investigation is ongoing, and there's one in which I think it was 11 firearms were seized. We have actually started an anti-gang investigation. We have identified a number of gang members. We have identified the key players, and we are working jointly with our international partners. We have identified the main perpetrator from overseas, and one of the hindrance, one of the things that prevented us from progressing further is the COVID-19. We are well advanced, and so all of those major finds we have made headway, and we are making headway in those. The last find, there's a joint investigation between the JCF and our international partners, and it is ongoing, and I can guarantee that we're going to get to the bottom of that one as well.
So we're reducing the space with the tools available to us, and we're creating new tools to stop the gang violence and bloodletting on one sense, but to create an environment of greater safety, whether it's on our roads or in our commercial areas, and over the next, certainly over this year, we're focusing on more public safety, public order, whilst at the same time targeting those gang members and criminals who are bent on murder and murdering each other and the families and associates of other gang members.
Life is about balance, about give and take. And forests give us so much. They purify our water. They clean our air. They fight climate change by capturing carbon. They give us food, life-saving medicines, and they improve our well-being. But our forests are vulnerable. They are endangered by fires, pests, droughts, and other threats. That is why we need to look after them. We need to give not only take. Healthy forests for healthy people.
The Joint Select Committee of Parliament considering job descriptions, codes of conduct and performance standards for parliamentarians wants to hear from you. Send your opinions in writing by Tuesday, October 3, 2023 to Clerk to the Houses, Gordon House, 81 Duke Street, Kingston. Or email us at clark@japarliament.gov.jm. Visit the Parliament's website at www.japarliament.gov.jm for details.
Earthquakes can happen at any time. It has nothing to do with the weather. It has nothing to do with the heat. Are you prepared?
What we all need to do is have our preparedness kits ready, just as you would for a hurricane. And this needs to be done year-round. So you need to have your kit with medical supplies. If you are in need of medicine, you have those medications on hand. And general things such as painkillers. You need to have water supply to last you a few days, as well as food that may not require cooking.
Stay prepared.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm Vanessa Silvera. Now, the pilot phase of the electronic traffic ticket system is now in operation, and it is proving to be very effective. It's also a welcomed move by members of the police force. Now, to provide more details on this initiative is Head of the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, PSTEB, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Gary McKenzie. Welcome to the program, ACP McKenzie.
Thank you for having me.
Now, this electronic ticketing system is said to be a game changer in the police force, particularly in the traffic division. How is this so?
Well, it is definitely so in a number of ways. In fact, what it aims to do is for us to be more efficient in terms of how we serve the public. So, first up, we will make less mistakes. One of the issues with using paper-based traffic ticket is that the officer has to write. And so you don't have to do this by using the electronic device. It is pre-populated with certain information. And so if, for example, your driver's license number is inputted, then everything else about the driver comes up. Also, if you input the information in terms of the registration plate, then other information around the vehicle also comes up. So the police officer is able to issue a traffic ticket much faster. The device also comes with a printer, so the ticket is also printed at the same time. And of course, if the person chooses the option to pay a ticket just after the ticket has been issued, then they can go ahead and pay it because...
Right then and there.
Right then and there.
Right.
Right, not to the officer, but online, that is.
Right. Okay, now this system is connected to the Island Traffic Authority, the Inland Revenue Department, and the courts as well. How useful is this?
Very useful, and I just mentioned one of the advantage in terms of the information being online, and so you know, it can be paid at the same time. Also, because there is this connectivity to TAJ, the information can be compared. So, for example, an officer could stop a person, and when they input the license plate, number, and letter, it differs from the vehicle that is actually in front of the officer.
Oh.
So that would send up a red flag to say that there is some misplacement in terms of the actual vehicle and the plate that is on it. And that also goes as well for the driver's license, because we have already discovered persons tendering fictitious driver's license to the police.
So it's a crime-fighting tool as well?
It is also a crime-fighting tool because you can gather information. You are also able to see how much outstanding traffic tickets that the person actually have. So it's really a very good tool.
It is. Now, let me ask, what kind of information shows up when the motorist's information is entered into the system?
Well, the person's address, their date of birth, when the driver's license was issued, when it expires, for the vehicle, the registration information, your fitness information, the insurance company for which the vehicle would have been insured, as well as the issue and the expiry dates.
All right, and how extensive is the rollout of the e-traffic ticket system? Is it in all areas of the island, or is it in concentrated areas?
Well, it is not yet in all areas of the island. We have started in the more dense area of the country, which is in the corporate area and St. Catherine, and the aim is to extend it. Just like anything else, once you start, then you assess and you move across as you acquire more instruments.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the response from members of the JCF who use this electronic ticketing system.
Well, they are very happy with it because, for one, if you do not have to spend 5 or 7 minutes to write, and you are able to issue a traffic ticket within 2 minutes, then that is really quite very efficient. And so also with the paper-based ticket, the officers usually, when they get in off duty, they would have to write up several forms. They don't have to do that again because it is actually, the information is already on the system, that is electronically. So, you know, it makes it much easier.
It does. Insightful. Now we have to take a break. So come back soon because this is a very interesting discussion.
It's absolutely critical that we receive the vaccines. You will see hospitalizations and indeed deaths likely come down. And so there is a lot of value to be gained by getting as many vulnerables on board as possible. So tell your mothers, tell your aunts, listen out for yourselves if you're over 60 and take the vax, because the vax is what will help you to guard against the COVID virus and indeed help your relatives, your friends, those who you come in contact with for the same benefit.
Welcome back to Get the Facts. Now we continue our discussion with Head of the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, PSTEP, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Gary McKenzie. Let's talk about your division, ACP McKenzie. It's about enforcing public order among road users, right? And it's about ensuring road safety and public safety. All right. Now, why does it seem so challenging to get motorists, especially PPV drivers, not to congest the town centers?
Well, public safety, it really takes care of everything as it relates to the public, and certainly in terms of management of public spaces and the roadways, it is quite a lot of things, because we are talking about not only use of the road, but use of other areas to include transportation centers, other business complexes, and so on. And so that is a part of the whole issue of public safety. But to get specifically to what you had asked in terms of persons adhering to rules and so on, we have seemed to get into a culture of indiscipline that is affecting us so very badly. And of course, we have done a lot of enforcement. Last year, for example, we would have issued over 440,000 traffic tickets. And yearly, that is about the average. And so it is not a lack of enforcement. Of course, there always have to be more enforcement as long as we have offenses being committed. But the fact is that we really want people to take personal responsibility. And so we go the education route. We try to get to the various associations as it relates to public passenger vehicles. We try to get to other corporations, organizations, the schools in terms of use of the road, because we do have quite a bit of fatalities involving pedestrians, motorcyclists, and private motor car drivers and passengers.
What can be done to change this culture, the culture of indiscipline, and where we have persons calling it economic survival mode? I mean, what can be done about it? And it also prevents them from complying.
Well, I think there has to be an early realization of what it means to be safe in using the roads. Of course, transportation is a very big part of our survival in Jamaica.
Right.
And there have been calls from several quarters that road safety in particular should be introduced in schools, especially high schools. I mean, we have already introduced it at the primary level, but certainly it should be part and parcel of growth in terms of our realization of taking care of ourselves. And so education, certainly improved legislation also needs to be a part of it. We know that the new Road Traffic Act, when commissioned, it will take care of several things to include jaywalking and, of course, increased use of technology in terms of persons disobeying traffic lights at intersections and cameras being there to generate tickets and so on. Those things cumulatively will make a difference. But, you know, personal responsibility is the key.
I agree. But what is stopping us from rolling it out on a broader scale, especially in our schools?
Well, it is just to get the will to actually do it. Of course, the police is working with other entities, such as the National Road Safety Council. I know the Ministry of Education has to be involved and so on. And so the discussions are really far advanced, and there has been some amount of work, but we really need to get it to be more systematic and to be more concretized in these institutions.
You mentioned the work that is being done. What are some of the strategies that are being applied to restore the acceptable standard of public order in these spaces?
Well, one of the things that we have to do is to get everybody to understand the crisis that we actually have.
You call it a crisis?
It is a crisis. Okay. I mean, we are losing. Last year, it was 483 persons who died on our roads.
Wow.
The year before that, it was 432. And so you find if we are losing over 400 persons every year on our roads, and we are talking about breadwinners. The category that features the most is persons between the ages of 18 to 35 years old. And, you know, it is mostly men. So you find that young adult stage, mostly breadwinners, persons who are really in their peak in terms of contributing to the success and development of the country, they are losing their lives on the roads. And it can be avoided. Over 90% of crashes are caused by human error. So this is something that we have to get into the head spaces of these persons. But as a police officer, you know, we have to enforce. We have to use all that we have to enforce, to educate, to work along with our stakeholders to ensure that we can make a difference.
Now, you mentioned the specific age group and the gender of persons who tend to have road traffic accidents. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, the fact of the matter is that we have more male drivers. We have also more male drivers who drive for profit, meaning persons who drive public transportation.
Right.
And also commercial vehicles. And if you look at motorcyclists, 163 motorcyclists died last year, mostly men. So we find that this category, you know, persons who drive for profit, males features heavily, and so they really take a little more chance as well. And so we have to work on these groups.
All right. Sometimes there's this floating perception that ticketing and heavy fines will fix the disorder and the breaches that we see of the road code. How close to reality is this?
Well, we hope that the new Road Traffic Act will be commissioned, pretty quickly. It is already there. The fines, the increased fines are there. But I would like to say that in addition to that, the circle of enforcement needs to be closed. What I mean by that is that there are numerous persons who have been issued with traffic tickets that have accumulated demerit points over 10, 14, and they are still driving without their licenses being suspended. So that aspect of it we also need to close.
Right.
Because when a person accumulates 10 to 14 points, then their driver's license should be suspended for 6 months or a year. We can't have persons committing multiple breaches, having so many demerit points, and they are still out there. Because what will happen, you keep prosecuting them over and over, and they are not learning, it is not serving as a deterrent so that we can have behavior change.
But the e-traffic ticket system is going to be part of the solution, isn't it?
Definitely so,
Yes.
because that accumulation of points that we just spoke about, that will be on the system as well. And we will be able to use the system to generate those suspension notices and so on.
Okay. Finally, ACP Mackenzie, how do we get it right? You're out there every day, you are seeing the issues, you're seeing the problems. How do we get it right?
Well, we have to continue to work on all the systems that we just spoke about. We have to continue to improve technology in terms of how we enforce, in terms of how we educate. We have to incrementally improve our legislation.
Right.
We have to deal with our road environment as well, more marks, more signs. We have to be able to identify those areas that we have vulnerabilities. And I believe that all those things coming together will make a difference.
Insightful, and all of these are going to come together to make our nation's roads safer for use by pedestrians as well as motorists.
Definitely.
Thank you so very much, ACP Mackenzie, for coming and sharing with us. This has been Get the Facts. Our guest was head of the Public Safety and Traffic Enforcement Branch, PSTEP, Assistant Commissioner of Police, Gary Mackenzie. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I am Vanessa Silvera. Take care.
Twists, turns, ins and outs. From the four corners of the earth, PBCJ presents Globe-Trotting Yardie with Carol Francis.
There are numerous ways of traveling across the city of Delhi.
Tantalizing, breathtaking and revealing, bringing you the wonders of travel from across the world. That's Globe-Trotting Yardie right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.
I'm out of school now, and me a look at job. I'ma just go on an interview and them tell me say me not have enough experience. But I'ma forget experience if me not get no job.
No worry yourself, bro. I have some info for you. There is a $2 billion program that will help high school graduates gain job experience. 2,500 fifth and sixth form graduates will benefit from the LIFT program over 5 years.
This program is also about investment. And so our young people will be getting $85,000 monthly. That is a part of poverty alleviation. This $70,000 in hand and $15,000 will be placed in their bank accounts that they will not be able to access until they complete the program.
The Ministry of Education and Youth and the Office of the Prime Minister, through the Heart NSTA Trust, are teaming up to provide 8 weeks of skills training. After that, participants will get a 1-year employment placement with a government or private sector entity. Bro, all you have to do to get in the program is
be 17 years of age or older and have at least 3 CSEC subjects, including mathematics and English. You will also need 2 character references and must have graduated high school within the last year. It's for the most needy, so applicants must also demonstrate financial hardship. If you are interested, apply online at the Heart NSTA Trust's website or submit the form to your Member of Parliament's constituency office. The application period is open until August 31.
Me really love this Jamaican proverb, you know, but I'll know me wait. Every whore have them tick a bush. Simply put, there is someone out there for everyone. Me still a wait for me stick though.
The Joint Select Committee of Parliament, considering job descriptions, codes of conduct, and performance standards for parliamentarians, wants to hear from you. Send your opinions in writing by Tuesday, October 3, 2023 to Clerk to the Houses, Gordon House, 81 Duke Street, Kingston. Or email us at clark@japarliament.gov.jm. Visit the Parliament's website at www.japarliament.gov.jm for details.
Hi everyone, by now you would have heard the great news. Jamaica's unemployment rate is 4.5%. That's the lowest unemployment rate in the history of Jamaica. We are now close to full employment. As Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation, this is the best news that our economy can have. It means that our economy continues to expand, but what it really means is that more Jamaicans have income. It means that more Jamaican families can do much better than they were doing before. We are building Jamaica.
Traveling to Jamaica? Submit your customs and immigration declaration online for faster processing. Visit the enterjamaica.com portal, complete and submit your declaration prior to departure. Upon arrival, proceed to the immigration kiosk and swipe your passport to confirm your trip details and declaration. Once done, proceed to the customs hall to retrieve your luggage and final clearance. The online C5, making air travel easier. You may contact us or the Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency for more information.
Once you come to our domestic violence center, you will be greeted with a pleasant face, because what we do, we are about caring for persons, and we're also about empathizing with persons. So when you come, you have an environment that you are comfortable in, and that you'll be free to express yourselves and to seek the intervention that you desire, and we provide that avenue for you to come. It's a safe haven for you. Once you are with us in our center, you are protected. And so you can rest assured that we will act on your behalf and act in your best interest.
The center, it's a place, it's an environment where you can be comfortable. You can, when you come here, you're supposed to feel relaxed. So whatever the issue is, we're not saying that we are miracle workers, but what we're saying is that we're persons who are open to listening to you, accommodating you. We believe in confidentiality, and therefore whatever is said here is kept here.
The Victim Services Division provides support for all victims of crime. It does not matter the type of crime that has been committed against you, or doors are open to you.
Some of those victims are persons who've suffered sexual abuse, family members of people murdered, individuals who've experienced robbery and intimate partner violence, otherwise known as domestic abuse. They all can be grouped into one of three categories: primary, secondary, or tertiary victim. Who is a primary victim?
The person to whom the crime has been directly committed. Now, in the case where the primary victim is deceased, we will provide the service to their next of kin and their immediate family members, who in this case will be the secondary victims.
Secondary victims may not have had the act perpetrated on them, but they do experience some amount of trauma due to what their loved ones may have endured. Then there are the tertiary victims.
Victim service workers are categorized as tertiary victims. And so we think about persons like the police officers who have to interface with these situations on a day-to-day basis. There is secondary traumatization that they experience. And so it is critically important that persons not only recognize that these events can have an impact on them, be they primary, secondary, or tertiary victim, but also that they need to get assistance to be able to deal with the effects of the trauma that they have experienced.
Tertiary victims also suffer what's called vicarious trauma. This results in some form of distress caused from the horrific experiences of others.
For example, a mother who has a 9-year-old child and hears of the incident where a 9-year-old was brutally murdered. That person will feel some amount of trauma, some amount of fear even because of what has happened to that child when they think of the fact that they too have a 9-year-old child.
A department in the Ministry of Justice, the Victim Services Division, is determined to help.
We have come to recognize that even in the cases where there are physical wounds, when those have healed, the wounds that are created, the psychological wounds and the social injuries that are created, are far harder to heal, especially if the person has received no intervention to deal with the trauma that they have faced.
The division provides a support system for individuals, including through counseling sessions which have been extended to e-counseling, an initiative that was boosted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a therapeutic process that is based on trauma-informed care to help individuals cope. Another is crisis intervention. This is where experts at the division may need to accompany police officers onto a scene to help victims understand what is happening. It's known as on-the-scene response.
Additionally, we provide services in terms of home visits. So we'll visit the homes of victims and provide services to them there, school visits, and that sort of thing in terms of crisis intervention.
Another part of the treatment focuses on informing the victims of their rights.
We try to assist them through the process, get in touch with the relevant persons to get information that they may need to even understand the process of the investigation, what is happening, what will be happening, or what should happen.
Due to the unnerving experience of a trial and the added traumatization of the victims, the division also gives court support to help persons prepare for trial.
When a victim has to go to court, it can be a very frightening experience for both adults and children. So one of the ways in which we advocate, instead of having the victim being seated in the same area and being able to be seen by the perpetrator and they're seeing the perpetrator and they may feel fearful and not able to go through the process, we ask that they be seated in another area where they don't have to interface with this, or even where they don't have to interface where possible with the general public.
The Victim Services Division also provides a Children in Court program.
In terms of dealing with the children, some of the tools that we use, we may utilize a model courtroom that really depicts the courtroom setting and give them an idea as to where individuals may be seated, who they will interact with, who they can expect to interact with them, that sort of thing. In some instances, we're even able to bring the victim to the courthouse prior to the date so that they can basically see the lay of the land and get a better appreciation and understanding. So when they turn up on that day, it's not all brand new to them. And preparation for us, let me be clear, is really orientating them to the process. We do not interfere with statements. We do not interfere with whatever it is they will be going there to say. We are all about the court process, the layout of the court, and basically educating them as to what they can expect.
You do not have to suffer in silence. You do not have to be afraid.
We operate on a principle of neutrality. It does not matter who you are. It does not matter what your story is. Our doors are open to you once you have become a victim of a crime.
For more information, contact the Victim Services Division in your parish and get help today.
Traveling to Jamaica? Submit your customs and immigration declaration online for faster processing. Visit the enterjamaica.com portal, complete and submit your declaration prior to departure. Upon arrival, proceed to the immigration kiosk and swipe your passport to confirm your trip details and declaration. Once done, proceed to the customs hall to retrieve your luggage and final clearance. The online C5, making air travel easier. You may contact us or the Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency for more information.
She's got heart, she's got style, and she'll make it worth your while. She's got good news to help you. Get rid of the stress, just relax and be blessed. Listen, watch, and grow with the new English show. Won't you come on in and be blessed? That's what you get when you're on the new English show. You'll be pointed to the Most High. Oh yeah, that's what you get when you're on the new English show. Won't you come on in and be blessed? That's what you get when you're on the new English show. You'll be pointed to the Most High. Oh yeah, that's what you get when you're on the new English show. You will be lifted and blessed by the Lord Most High when you're with the new English show.
I know one day monkey want wife. I better say it in a nice Jamaica way, you know, because they wouldn't say nothing like want. I know one day monkey want wife. In other words, you don't know how often you'll need help in the future. So you be careful not to turn your back on those who help you. I know one day monkey want wife.
Ready.
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 Set. Hey, Shamar.
What's up, Janine?
I think it's time.
You mean that time?
That time.
Ready? We promised you last year
that UNDP's Ready Set Great Youth in Development Showcase
would be back bigger and better in 2023.
Get ready for our first ever in-person conference, one day only.
Planned, led, and inspired by youth.
We need you at Ready Set Great to help tackle the greatest youth challenges of our time.
Young people, youth groups, youth leaders, get ready.
Our work starts here. $2.15.
Thank you.
Those who earn less than this daily are considered extremely poor by international standards.
But should the world measure poverty using just income-based consumption?
Poverty has multidimensional causes and effects, so how we measure poverty must also be multidimensional.
Many groups who might not be income poor can in fact be multidimensionally poor.
Impacted by deprivations in health, education, and living standards.
As youth leaders, we see great value in strengthening our measurement of poverty using the Multidimensional Poverty Index.
Not to replace income-based consumption measures, but to complement, revealing where poverty hits hardest.
Ensuring resources can be precisely allocated to tackle the drivers of poverty.
Leaving no one behind, especially we young people, persons with disabilities, and rural communities.
That is where you and I come in.
Ready Set Great 2023 is our opportunity to add our voice to solutions tackling youth poverty and to help each other become the greatest versions of ourselves.
Get ready to be inspired.
Get ready to be entertained.
Get ready to learn from youth trailblazers.
Get ready for the Development Challenge 2023.
Get ready to produce your joint call to action.
Tell a friend, tag a group. Are you ready? Register now for Ready Set Great 2023, taking place on October 17th, which is the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty.
Ready, set, great!
Hi everyone, by now you would have heard the great news. Jamaica's unemployment rate is 4.5%. That's the lowest unemployment rate in the history of Jamaica. We are now close to full employment. As Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation, this is the best news that our economy can have. It means that our economy continues to expand, but what it really means is that more Jamaicans have income. It means that more Jamaican families can do much better than they were doing before. We are building Jamaica.
Keep that smile on their faces and preserve their innocence. Cherish the moments you have with them and create the best memories. Let's inspire our children to dream big and work hard to achieve all they aspire to be. Take the time to listen to our children and really hear their side of the story. Our children deserve love and the right to access their basic needs. Do your part and protect our children.
We
all play a pivotal role in proactively filling up the blood bank by donating blood, by encouraging those who can donate to do so regularly, and by offering support, whatever that looks like. So be it to retweet it, be it to ask a family member, tell a friend, a co-worker, a colleague, even a stranger.
1 liter of blood can save 3 lives. You can give half of that at any of the Ministry of Health and Wellness's blood collection sites. There is no time to wait in a time of crisis where blood is needed. Every passing moment, the life of someone who needs blood hangs in the balance.
I stand here before you as a testimony of the life-saving effects of donating blood. Someone gave, that's why I am alive today.
If you are 17 to 60 years old and in good health, please give so others can live.
Setting things right, this Honourable House passed legislation against sexual harassment. My intention is to set Monday, July 3 as the commencement date of the Sexual Harassment Act.
For years, there have been complaints about sexual harassment, and we did not have a legislation to address this, and so persons were suffering in silence.
Know that the act is here. It says if you harass someone, you will pay.
The law comes into force on July 3, meaning everybody is required now to take it seriously.
Everyone should know that there is a process. You have been harassed, you go to HR.
Give them all the information that is possible, when it happened, where it happened, all the details if there's anybody who was a witness.
HR has 2 days in which to inform the person that there's been a complaint against them. They have 14 days in which to do an investigation. And if nothing is done, the person can now take their complaint to the tribunal.
If the case is brought before the tribunal and the person is found guilty, the penalty for that is up to 1 million Jamaican dollars or imprisonment.
The tribunal is housed within the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. Persons can know that if they have a complaint, they can go to the tribunal. It will be taken seriously and it will be confidential.
Compost is one of the richest forms of soil nutrient. So here we are buying fertilizer for huge sums of money, when in fact we are throwing away something which is richer in many regards than what we are buying, spending hard cash for. We, from time to time, do what we call garbage characterization survey. This is where we actually go island-wide and take samples of the garbage and look at what make up the garbage. All the surveys that are done in recent past points to one particular set of dynamic. The compostables are always the highest. 67% in some survey, 65% in some. We eat vegetables. We do ground provisions, the peelings from those. We use cardboards, newspapers, lots of stuff that can be broken down and can be put to good use. With such a high percentage of the solid waste being compostable, we are therefore forced to look at how we're going to manage in the best way possible, in the most efficient way possible, that high percentage of the garbage.
Composting is a rich form of soil that is broken down by microorganisms to become either fertilizer or soil. Now we're going to do a demonstration to show you how we can do it. First, if we're starting, this is our kitchen waste. So if you're starting a compost bin at home, you need to get your kitchen peel, your banana, your lettuce, your cabbage, your tomatoes, and you cut them in finer particles. It will make it break down much faster. In order for the microorganism to work effectively, you need moisture, you need air, and you need heat. You can use a hand shovel or your hands. Too much moisture will allow the stuff to rot and it won't be composed. And if it is too dry, the microorganisms won't be able to work effectively. So you need to get a right mixture. If you squeeze it with a fist, you shouldn't have any water running out of it. If it's dripping, it is okay. If it is running out of it, that means you have too much water. So now this is our compost. If you keep this moisture in your compost, it will give you a maturity rate of 3.5 months. And you'll get this final product, which is this right here. Compost, what it does, the longer it stays into the ground, is the richer it becomes. We're going to demonstrate how we use our compost for potting. We're going to pot a few plants using our compost. This plant is called spider fern. It is an indoor plant that does like a fair amount of water. It likes a light mixture. The composting can be used for indoor and outdoor plants. This plant is called a bougainvillea. It is an outdoor plant. It likes a lot of sunlight. It blooms a lot, and it likes dry areas. The compost is offer drainage. It doesn't keep the water too long. This is now 6 weeks old, and this is 3 weeks after being planted as a seedling, using our compost. And this bougainvillea is 6 weeks after being planted by our compost. And they're just blooming, blooming, blooming. This is a mature spider fern that we use for our rentals, and this is about 2.5 months old.
At the NSWMA, the parks that we manage, the beautiful flowers that you see there, the composting that is used to fertilize these plants are actually done within the department here at Parks and Gardens.
The other benefit is that we at the NSWMA, we would need less trucks. Now, right now, our biggest problem is trucks to remove garbage. Can you imagine if we could take out the 67%, which we could convert at source? What that would do to our national budget? Gas oil, repairs of trucks, labor to work on the trucks. Just look at it. It is huge savings that could come. Exponential is about getting a behavioral change at source that will see significant reduction in solid waste. We want to see this reduction and to see it in a very tangible way. And we believe that composting provides that excellent opportunity.
Madam Speaker, I'm so sorry for the extended delay in the resumption of the Parliament. But at this time, I ask for the recommittal of announcements, notices of motions given orally, and presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Thank you, House Leader. The question is that we recommit notices. No, hold on. The question is that we recommit 3 items. What's in my list?
So where is it? Where is it?
Minister Clark, would you be so kind as to turn your mic off? House Leader, there is one other adjustment statement by Minister, so would it be possible for you to just do the... So, Minister Clark, we will first recommit announcements and then notices of motions given orally, and last but not least, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Clerk, announcements. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Also laid on the table of the House today are copies of the Government of Jamaica Fiscal Policy Paper for the financial year 2023-2024, interim report dated 26th September 2023. The Jamaica Public Body's second Supplementary of Estimates of Revenues and Expenditure for the year ending March 2024. Dated September 2023. The Jamaica Third Supplementary Estimates for the financial year 2023-2024, dated September 2023.
Minister of Finance, notice of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move to introduce, and I have read a first time, a bill shortly entitled the Financial Services Commission Amendment Act of 2023.
Members, the printing office is having a challenge. We have received 10 copies so far. They are continuing the process of printing. So for those who have not had a copy, that's the challenge. Please bear with us. Thank you very much.
Our next one? Yeah. Madam Speaker, I beg you to give notice at the next meeting of the House. I'll move the following motion. Be it resolved that the third supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending 2023-2024, the Government of Jamaica Fiscal Policy Paper for financial year 2023-24, the interim report, and the Jamaica Public Body's second supplementary of estimates and revenue and expenditure for the year ending March 2024, which have been laid on the table of the House on the 26th day of September 2023, be referred to the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I'll move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Minister Clark.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Financial Services Amendment Act of 2023.
Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Financial Services Commission Amendment Act 2023.
Clark.
A bill shortly entitled the Financial Services Commission Amendment Act 2023, read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Here it is.
We will now recommit announcements. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Ayes have it.
Also laid on the table of the House today are the following: the Auditor General's Department Special Audit Report of the Transport Authority Human Resources Administration and Procurement Practices. And the head, the Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Accounts for Head 2833, Office of the Parliamentary Council for the year 2012-2013. Head 2827, Resident Magistrate Court, and 28,027 Resident Magistrate Court for the year 2010, 2011, and 2016 to 2017. Head 2823 Court of Appeal for the year 2011, 2012. Head 2829 Supreme Court 2010-2011. Head 2826 Family Court for 2011-2012, and Head 28,026 Family Court 2016-2017.
Public business. Minister Clark.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move, be it resolved, that the third supplementary estimates of expenditure for the financial year ending 2023-2024, which was laid on the table of the House on the 26th day of September 2023, be referred to the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report.
Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, as is customary at the table of supplementary, just provide a narration of what is contained in the documents. They can be presented in this format. It can be sometimes not easy for the public to understand. So this is just a narration. The debate will ensue once the supplementary goes through the PAC. As the House is aware, the Financial Administration and Audit Act requires that within 6 months of the passage of the Appropriations Act, a fiscal policy paper is to be tabled in Parliament that provides an outturn for the fiscal year, for the prior fiscal year, the performance of the first quarter of the current financial year, projections for the current financial year, and projections for the medium term. I therefore today, Madam Speaker, table the fiscal policy paper 23-24 interim report in keeping with the requirements of the FAA Act. The House may recall that on tabling of the second supplementary estimates earlier this year, I indicated that the second year requirement under the compensation restructure for a number of ministries, departments, and agencies was still being determined, and as such, that supplementary did not address the full central government complement. Alongside the tabling of the interim fiscal policy paper, I'm also tabling the third supplementary estimates for the financial year 2023-2024 to reflect, among other things, the allocation of amounts to facilitate implementation of the second year of the compensation restructure for those ministries, departments, and agencies not previously addressed in the second supplementary estimates. The public body's second supplementary estimates is also being tabled today. The third supplementary estimates provide for total expenditure of $1,094,387 million, which is an increase of $58.2 billion over the second supplementary estimates. And this will be financed by tax revenues, non-tax revenues, a grant, as I will mention later. The third supplementary estimates provide for non-debt recurrent expenditure of $719.4 billion, inclusive of below-the-line amounts, which represent an increase of $39.1 billion over the second supplementary estimates. Capital expenditure of $66.6 billion, which represents a reduction of $8.7 billion on the prior allocation for capital programs, and debt service of $308 billion, comprised of interest payments of $170 billion, which represents an increase of $14.9 billion, and amortization payments of $138 billion, representing an increase of $12.9 billion. The additional $39.1 billion in non-debt recurrent expenditure is allocated as follows: $1.4 billion to recurrent programs, and $37.2 billion to compensation of employees, and $0.6 billion to other outflows, which consists of loans to public bodies. These indicated increases represent the net changes to each of the categories, as the overall adjustments to the prior budgets involve reallocations, reductions, and additions to various activities. The net increase of $1.4 billion on recurrent programs is therefore the end result of adjustments that include $1.7 billion allocated for the holding of local government elections within the fiscal year, $480 million to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, of which $400 million is for social housing, and $80 million to support the trucking of water by the NWC to drought-stricken areas, $420 million to the Ministry of Local Government, of which $100 million for the cleanup of town centres, $200 million for community roads, $120 million for indigent housing, and $60 million for the trucking of water. $200 million to the Ministry of Labour and Social Security for the provision of compassionate grants, $260 million to the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries for farm roads, $126 million to the Ministry of Culture, Gender and Sport, including $31.5 million, Madam Speaker, to support the development of sports and cultural program for youth, and $50.9 million to support the establishment of a GIS regional office in St. Thomas. In addition, $1.6 billion to support compensation restructure payments for central government agencies and the JUTC, which includes $472 million to the JUTC, $345 million to the University Hospital, $395 million to the Caribbean Maritime University, $120 million to the Tourism Enhancement Fund, and $107 million to the Ministry of Health agencies. The net increase of $37.2 billion on compensation of employees reflects the allocation of $54.5 billion to this category to address the second year implementation of the compensation restructure and the provision of amounts to address arrears related to the first year of compensation. Amounts for the NCTVET and VTDI agencies that have been transferred from HART to the Ministry of Education and Youth. It should be noted that $18.1 billion of the $54.5 billion was included in the approved budget under the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, and is therefore now being reallocated to various MDAs. On capital expenditure, Madam Speaker, the $8.7 billion reduction in CapEx primarily reflects an adjustment of $7.5 billion to the contingency provision for new capital projects that may be approved during the current fiscal year that are to commence implementation in that year. Additional reductions have been made to projects where implementation is behind schedule, and there are also reallocations within the category. Projects in receipt of reallocated amounts include the Montego Bay Perimeter Road, an increase of $930 million, and the Cornwall Regional Hospital, an increase of $806 million. The adjustments to debt service primarily reflect the impact of increases in the interest costs for external loans indexed to the secured overnight financing rate, which replaces LIBOR, and costs associated with the IMF RFI repayments, which amortize at a faster pace than other financing. Madam Speaker, the financing of the third supplementary estimates is programmed for a projected increase in revenues and grants by $43.1 billion, primarily consisting of an increase in tax revenues of $35.8 billion, non-tax revenues of $6.1 billion, and grants of $1 billion. Additional loan receipts will provide financing for the increases below the line. The public body's supplementary primarily reflects the changes in respect of the self-financing entities being assisted by the central government. So, Madam Speaker, the bulk of the third supplementary estimates deals with compensation of employees for the second year of the compensation restructuring, and as I mentioned, the total of that on a net basis is $37.2 billion, and it deals with additional debt service costs as a result of the increase in costs of servicing external debt, and that total amount is $25 billion. So $37 billion compensation of employees, $25 billion additional financing costs, and then $1.4 billion to recurrent programs, and $0.6 billion for other outflows, which is primarily loans to public bodies. And that represents the summary of the third supplementary estimates. I know that the opposition wouldn't have had time to review it yet, and so the purpose of this is just to highlight what's included for the debate that will ensue in due course. But the opposition member may have some remarks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a couple of questions for the Minister. In terms of the MDAs that have been addressed here, in terms of the MDAs that have been addressed in this third supplementary, how many MDAs are still outstanding in terms of they have not been provided with an allocation to deal with the public sector compensation review? I'm happy that there's an allocation for the holding of elections, and I hope we never ever have a situation where the government does not make an allocation for the holding of elections. And it's clear that the Minister is providing a lot in anticipation of something that may come, because I see a lot of money going to different places in anticipation of things that may come. I would tell you my biggest concern, Minister, my biggest concern represents the significant reduction in capital expenditure, $8.7 billion. And I want to know to what extent our public procurement system has contributed to that delay. I know you have this public investment management system where PIMS, where all capital projects, including the Tri-Bridge and everything has to go through. And I know it probably is a requirement of our multilateral agencies, but we get into a stage where we cannot implement projects. I was lamenting with my colleague from Northeast St. Andrew that we can't spend the $40 million allocated to MPs for roads almost 10 months after the allocation was done. And I believe we have to examine how we deal with public procurement. We want to ensure there's no corruption, but when you get to a system where you have $8.7 billion that you cannot spend, that's a problem. That is retarding economic growth and development. And frankly, it is not stopping corruption. This don't do nothing to stop corruption. And I believe we have to examine it. The former speaker and the member behind me, you cannot explain to somebody why an existing bridge that was destroyed can be replaced because you have to go through this PIM system. No, PIMs. No, we have to examine this. And it is frustrating, I think, every member in this House. And when you look at so much money being reallocated, there's something wrong. I also want to ask you, there's been much debate recently about the decision of the government not to bid on the World Cup cricket program. I notice 126 million has been allocated to the Ministry of Culture, Jen Babs's ministry, right? Does that include 100 million to go to the development of cricket? I see 126 allocated there. And finally, in the reallocations, I see 806 million to Cornwall Regional. We look like Cornwall Regional is a never-ending source of money. I don't know what the figure is, Maurice may know, in terms of how much we have spent so far. But I don't know what the end point is. We have gone billions and billions of dollars. We are adding another 806. So I'd love you to tell me what is the real budget to complete Cornwall Regional and how much over the original budget we actually are. So those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. First of all, let me congratulate the Honourable Minister for laying this supplementary budget. But, Madam Speaker, can you indicate when we will get the other 53 copies? Because I'm at a disadvantage. Because there's an item I'm looking for, a pet project of the Honourable.
Member, may I loan you my copy in the interim? Would you be so kind? No, please give the member my copy. I'd appreciate that. And you would have enough time to just take a look so that you're ready for debate. Thank you, member. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks for the contributions of both members who have spoken. Remind me if I missed any of your questions. The first question you asked was with respect to MDAs. So what we have here in the budget, we have providing support to MDAs who require support from central government to complete the implementation of their compensation restructuring. It's not desirable that in the completion of the restructuring, public bodies have to depend on central government. So it's not in all cases that the completion of the implementation will require central government financing. In respect of, I'll provide you by the time the debate comes around where we are, overall. But as I mentioned to you we only have a very small number of public bodies left, and here I'm using the definition of public bodies. But we do have, a few executive agencies and a few what we call commissions that are not public bodies. If you understand what I'm saying. So if you, maybe the language you can use is government agencies to cover the entire universe. I'll provide you with an update as to where we are and how many remain outstanding when we have the debate. Was your second point about procurement? Yeah, about the, right. So, the reduction, I'm not pleased with the reduction in the capital budget. Capital budget is the discretionary part, a big part of the discretionary part of the budget, and where the government can implement. That can.
Minister, I'm sorry to break you. I notice we're having a serious feedback in the mic. Once more than one mic is on, that feedback goes. So I think the volume is too high. It would be wonderful to adjust the volume. And in any event, I do believe you're able to adjust the volume a little bit on your own mic system there. Just turn it down a little bit and see if that improves the feedback we're having.
Testing. All right, so let me just say, Madam Speaker, that we on this side are in absolute agreement. The reduction of capex is not desirable by any means. And we have to work on the absorption capacity of the public bureaucracy. The success that the government has had on its fiscal program and its economic reform is such that capex is increasing at a rate that is outstripping the absorptive capacity of the public bureaucracy. And I would say it's a problem, but it's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have. All right? Now, the only redeeming thing with the reduction in the capex, Madam Speaker, is that it does not represent any project that is being it does not represent any project that is being canned. The reduction comes from the contingency provision in the capital expenditure envelope. So the capital expenditure envelope has a number of projects, A to Z. All of those are continuing. But in addition to that, it has a contingency provision in the event that new projects come on stream. So that is where the reduction is coming from. I agree with the overall sentiment that is undesirable. However, at least it's coming from the contingency provision and not from the postponement or cancellation of any particular project. Now, absorption capacity in the public sector with respect to capital projects is linked to two primary, well, it's linked to a number of factors, two of which have been raised here. One is the public investment system, and the other is procurement. Now, the public investment system, Madam Speaker, is a system that's designed to protect the Jamaican taxpayer, to ensure that projects are properly scrutinized before they're implemented. We have taken a look at certain gaps that have been pointed out in the public investment system where, and in August of this year, adjustments were made to the financial instructions as it regards capital projects that can be deemed to be emergencies. I don't plan to, right here, give a full description of those amendments, but just to summarize, to say that some of at an earlier debate that we had, this matter was raised, and I gave my commitment to look at the PIMS system, and we had a look at it, and projects that would fit the description of an emergency, whether from natural disaster or a project that, if not done, could mean immediate liability for the government or other kinds of emergency, like Troy Bridge, the procedures that are required for the public investment process will be significantly scaled down, such that the time involved will be significantly reduced. I promised it, and we have delivered it, Madam Speaker. In August this year, the instructions went out to all ministries, departments, and agencies for new projects. Yes, so it's a new arrangements for emergency projects. Now, with respect to procurement, there are two sides of it. One side, Madam Speaker, is that public bureaucrats have to be much more familiar with the provisions in the Procurement Act. That there are a lot of tools that can be used depending on circumstances, and we have to redouble our efforts in training procurement officers in the use of the Procurement Act. There's a lot in there that can allow for accelerated performance of capital projects. Having said that, we continue to review the Procurement Act, and at some point not too far in the future, we plan to introduce a few amendments here that can help to make that system more efficient. However, Madam Speaker, no matter what changes we make, we have to ensure that the persons who are responsible for using the Act are familiar with it. A big part of the problem sometimes is that people go all the way down the wicket and realize that they didn't do it in the way they ought to, and so it has to be done again. And that's where, frustrating as it is, delays can come from. So I absolutely share your concern there, and the purpose is just to say that something that we're working on. With respect to Cornwall Regional Hospital, I don't have those figures for you here, member, but it's something that I would have no problem answering once I have the data in front of me. And for the $126 million allocated to the Ministry of Culture and Gender, no, 31 million is for youth sports programs, and the minister will say something about it, that she's going to, through constituencies, where you put a proposal to the Ministry of Sport about a program involving sports at the constituency level. The Ministry of Culture, Gender approves the program, and you can implement it. And I think it will be sports and culture. Sports and culture. Okay? Now, with respect to the 100 million that was announced by the Ministry of Culture and Gender for the development of youth cricket, that's a commitment over the next 5 years, and that will begin in the next financial year. It's not in the supplementary. Okay? With respect to the question asked by the member from Western St. Mary, I would like to draw his attention to page 41,000C-1, Madam Speaker. The member is eager for the Jamaica Education Project, which involves the movement of schools on shift programs to schools off of shift programs across the length and breadth of Jamaica and in Western St. Mary. You know, he represents that they're ready. And on 41,000C1, you'll see an allocation to the Jamaica Education Project that is more than sufficient to begin the process of moving the school in question off of the shift system. And the rest now is up to the Ministry of Education to fulfill. So the allocation has been made. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had a conversation with the chairman of the PAC earlier, and the PAAC will consider these estimates next week, Wednesday, which I believe is the 2nd of October. Thank you, Madam Speaker. No, is it 4th of October? 4th of October. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, it's not proposed to do any further business today, so I now ask for the House to be adjourned until next Tuesday, the 3rd of October.
Members, the question is that the House do now adjourn for Tuesday, October 3rd at 2 p.m. sharp. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now stands adjourned.
firearm